presented 2 workshops for us at the Central New York Frontline Staff. And so I know you're in store for a really good learning experience today. So again, thank you, Christine, and thank all of you for joining us. One thing I would ask is at the end of this webinar, there will be a short survey that will pop up. It is very short, just 5 questions. If you could kindly stay on the webinar, stay hooked up to the internet for just a minute or so after the webinar closes and complete that survey. It will help NISCA plan future webinars, improve our webinars, and make the webinars as useful and enjoyable for you as possible. So if you please do that. One other thing I would note about the survey at the end, there was one question asking how many people attended the webinar at your site. So if you are viewing this in a group situation, if someone in the room could take responsibility and just fill out that survey and let us know how many people attended the webinar. If it's being viewed as a group, we would certainly appreciate that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our presenter, Christine Prevost, thank you, and say thank you, Christine, and go right ahead. We're all very interested in this topic, home visiting, safety, and other practical matters.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad that you chose to tune in for this very, very important topic. As we're getting started and I'm introducing myself, I'm going to invite you to respond to the question on your screen. I'd like you to tell me what some of the risky aspects of your job as a home visitor are. And while you're doing that, I will just let you know a little bit about my background. I'm a family development credentialed instructor, and I've been teaching that course since about 2004. We teach frontline workers course and a leaders course, and our frontline workers course includes a whole chapter devoted to home visiting. So if you have taken that class in the past, I invite you to go back and revisit Chapter 8. And if you're currently taking the FDC class, Chapter 8 is where you'll pay careful attention to reinforce some of the things that we hear today. I am also certified to teach what is called the Safety in the Community curriculum. It's a safety training program for mental health professionals that work in residential and institutional settings. For today's training, I'm going to be taking a piece of that curriculum and sharing that with you. It's the 10 rules for staying safe, and we're going to relate them today to the home visiting experience. Now, I don't actually have a view of the chat window, so Diana, can you tell me some of the things you see?
I absolutely can. And for anybody who would like to contribute, you can type your answers right into that question box, and I can give those to Christine. A couple of the hazards that folks have faced have been violent behavior from family members, and also bad weather affecting their personal safety as well. So those are 2 issues that that people who are viewing the webinar have faced during home visiting.
Okay, very important ones, especially coming into our winter months. Weather is a very important concern. But violent behaviors is a good thing to have on our list. We're going to be coming back and talking about some of the strategies that you can use to increase your safety when behaviors start to escalate.
And Christine, if I could interject, some other folks have added deplorable housing, dogs, mental illness, and encountering drug use.
Mental illness and drug use. Great, great list. Okay, right along. Our objectives for today, we're going to be covering them pretty quickly, but my hopes for today are that you'll be able to identify 3 safety risks, and we've already done that. Violent behaviors, weather, housing conditions, animals, mental health issues, and drugs. All of those are safety risks for home visitors. I'd like you to be able to describe at least one strategy for increasing your personal safety in each of those situations that you identified. And we'll also, if we have some time, talk about some of the other practical matters of home visiting, such as dealing with pets and offers for food and beverage, and some of the other distractions that can happen during a visit. Move us on to the next one. The reasons for conducting home visits. Our agencies certainly have very good reasons for sending us out into clients' homes. You can see the benefits on this slide. It allows us to observe families in their own setting. They might be at more ease if they're in their home. If they don't have access to transportation, this allows us to bring our services to them and helps us on the whole to have a better understanding of the family's circumstances. In your chat window, can you tell me what you think are some of the potential pitfalls? And Diana, I'll ask you to just give me a couple of samplings of what our viewers are writing. What are some of the pitfalls of conducting home visits?
While people are thinking about a few of those, also I would mention that Christine has also asked that everyone hold their questions until the end, and then we will go over those. But it's always a good idea, if you have a question, go ahead and write it in. Make sure you use a question mark at the end so I know you're responding to you need a question answered. And at the end, I will go back and review those and present them to Christine rather than breaking up the flow of the presentation. We will answer those questions at the end. Okay, a couple of the pitfalls that have been identified are families begin to view us as friends and not workers. Families are not comfortable with home visits. Exposure to fleas, bed bugs, and other animals that we've talked about. And another pitfall is language barriers.
Good one, good one. Okay, so we have some excellent things listed there. Some other suggestions. Certainly, I think we suggested that the family might not want us there. They might not welcome strangers in their home. For many visitors, it's not uncommon to hear them tell us that they arrive on time for the visit and the person is not there. The distractions of daily household life, when the family life is going on in the background and you're trying to work with just one family member, certainly that makes it difficult. The environment might be hazardous, some of the things that you mentioned, exposure to some of the living organisms in the home. The neighborhood may not be safe, or the home itself might be hazardous. And another pitfall that is frequently brought up is getting lost, particularly on a first visit to a family's home. So with those reasons in mind, we move into some safety planning, coming up with a safety plan to help us increase our safety. And I'm here to tell you that participating on this webinar and taking safety training is not going to make you bulletproof. It's not going to solve all your safety issues, but certainly having a plan and practicing what you might do in certain case scenarios increases the likelihood that you'll put some good strategies into use when you need to. So some of the things that you're already doing to increase your safety while conducting home visits. If you have some things that your agency already asks you to do, or things that you are doing just because you know it's good practice, go ahead and share those ideas in the chat window. I'll come back to those. Some of the things you're already doing. They might include things like posting your schedule where someone else in the office can see it. So if you can't be accounted for, there's someone who knows where they can go to look for you. Carrying a cell phone. A cell phone is another, some agencies provide you with a cell phone that you can use while you're traveling on the road. Being mindful of how and where you park when you arrive at the family's home. Perhaps backing in so that you can drive straight out, or parking on a side street versus pulling into a driveway. Carrying only the things that you need for the visit, maybe having your key on a key ring by itself versus a whole ball of keys, carrying just the family's folder. When you arrive in the home, knowing where your exits are and being aware of your space. These are all some components of safety planning that home visitors have said through the course of several workshops. This is what they do to increase their safety. Do we have any new ideas to add to that list, Diana?
Well, let's see. We have calling ahead. Trust your instincts, I think, is very interesting as well. If you've not been there before, get as much info as you can, including a family history. Keep information where where workers are, their schedules, their directions. Always remain closest to the door while at a home visit. Take an inventory of your surroundings, both inside and outside the house, and check in and out with your phone before and after visits. And make sure somebody knows where you are at all points during the day.
Fantastic. These are some excellent, excellent strategies that you're already employing. We'll come back and look at these and see if we can plug those in to some of the information that we're going to cover next. But it sounds like we're off to a great start and that we have some experienced home visitors out there who are already doing very good things to protect themselves. I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is going to show us the 10 rules that I'd like to present today. And you could write these down furiously if you want to try and get them all down right now. But the next few slides are going to take these one or two at a time. So don't feel like you have to try and jot all this down right now. And also be aware that you, yes.
I'm sorry, Christine. I also want to let people know that this webinar is being recorded, so they'll also be able to access this by probably tomorrow, and they'll be able to see the slides. So if they're having some trouble taking notes today, that this will be up on our NISCA website for viewing by tomorrow or the next day.
Great, excellent. So our 10 rules for staying safe include offering respect, the concept being that if you go into a relationship giving respect, that you're more likely to get respect in return. We'll be talking about maintaining a safe distance, keeping yourself safe by offering the proper amount of space, being aware, assessing your situation. I heard someone say doing a scan when you arrive at the home and once you enter the home. That's very important part of being aware. Trusting your instincts. Someone mentioned that on one of the earlier questions, that they trust their instincts. That's huge, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Avoid making things worse, which implies that we know what things are going to make a situation worse, and we try to avoid those. Communicating a desire to help, letting folks know that we are there to help, and that is what we're motivated to do, and that we're there to listen. The 7th rule is diffuse the situation using your communication skills, relying on a safety plan, evaluating all incidents together as a team, all people that were involved in the incident, getting them together and taking a look at what happened. And of course, using your own good judgment. When all else fails, rely on your own good judgment. So let's take a look at these a little bit closer. Offering respect. If you offer respect, you're likely to get it in return. So as a home visitor, what are some of the things that you might do to offer respect? Well, our first picture seems to indicate a good way to get off to a good start is to smile, be friendly, look happy to be working with the family. Arriving on time is very important. One of our callers on the line mentioned that they would call ahead. Call ahead when you're running late. Call ahead when you're running ahead of schedule to get permission to meet early if the family is willing to do so. Honoring the family's privacy. Pointing out the strengths that you see in the family, things that you see in their house or about their household or about the way they care for their family members. Pointing out the strengths is a good way to build respect. Keeping your word, asking permission, and of course following the family's lead, being aware, watching their body language, and being sensitive to what is making the family uncomfortable or what is making them comfortable. So reading body language and following the family's lead are excellent ways of increasing respect. The next of the 10 rules is to maintain safe distance, offer space, increase the space between you and the other person if necessary. And there are several ways that we might practice this rule. It could mean literally the distance between us, the physical space between you and the person that you're meeting with. Good professional space is about 3 feet. So if you take your arms and wing them out to the side as if you were going to fly away, that's about 3 feet on either side. And if you just swivel from side to side, you shouldn't touch any objects or people. If you're touching people within that space, you have people in your safety circle, and that places you at higher risk than if you keep them outside of that professional circle. In reality, a lot of the work that we have to do involves getting very close with some of the family members. Some of our visitors are teaching techniques, and they're using a hand-over-hand method, so they're actually in contact with the family members. But just be aware that that does place you at a higher risk than keeping people outside of that safety circle. Also, in addition to the people threats, be aware of objects nearby that could be weaponized, such as scissors or knives or hot liquids. For that reason, meeting in someone's kitchen is probably going to be a bit riskier than meeting with someone in their living room. Some other things, other ways that we might offer space, offering some cooling off time or emotional space. Sometimes we just need to stop talking or stop asking questions, or let that person go to another place in their home to have some time to themselves before we continue what we're working on. And of course, thinking space is just time where no one is talking at all and we're just able to process what's happening in silence. So those are ways that we might practice increasing space or offering space as needed. The third rule on this list, I would say, is absolutely the most important. If you're keeping a list of these rules, I would star this or circle it or highlight it or put a sticker next to it. Being aware, assessing each person, each situation, every day. When we work with the same families over and over, over a long period of time, it is easy to relax our guard and develop expectations for how we think the next visit is going to go. One of our listeners mentioned that families start to think of us as friends. When those boundaries start to blur, then we can put ourselves at risk. The reality is that life is happening around all of us. It happens for all of us every day. A phone call, a visit from a family member, a change in medication, or a major life-altering event can happen at any time and dramatically change the way that we think or we act or behave. So when we're going into homes, into a family's home, we need to always treat that as an unpredictable environment. So some of the ways that you practice this rule are finding out information before you even take off from the office. What are some ways that you can gather information about the family's situation? What are some of the things when you arrive at the family's home? Scanning the environment, looking for signs of trouble or looking for signs of change. Is a car that's usually there missing? Are there new people in the home? So just assessing the environment. When you enter the home, being aware of how the family is reacting, reading their nonverbals and listening to what they're saying. Asking questions about things that have happened since the last time that you visited. If you work in collaboration with other providers from within your agency and you're able to share information, certainly case coordination or case management, when you have those coordination meetings, that's an opportunity to get more information about what is happening in the home. One of the other roles that I play at this agency is as a first aid instructor, and one of the first things we teach all students is to check the scene to make sure that it's safe, and that's going to apply to you as well. When you arrive at that family's home, make sure that you're scanning the environment and making sure that it feels safe for you before you proceed. Just a quick poll question. Diana, if you could bring up the first poll question. I'm curious before we go into the next rules to see.
Okay. And here we go.
Okay, so we're looking to see, have you ever shown up at the wrong address while conducting home visits?
And we have about 50% of our attendees have voted, getting up to about 70.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and it looks like about 61% have, yes, they have shown up at the wrong address, and about 39% have not.
Wow, okay. Yep, it's a very common thing to happen. Traveling in unfamiliar territory, turning onto unnamed road, or take a left at the horse that looks like a cow. We get these very unusual sets of directions, and it's no wonder that more than half of us have showed up at the wrong place. So what are some of the things that we can do to prevent that from happening? I bet some of you have already changed your strategies based on this happening just once. So some things that you can do are to double check the address and the directions with a family member. Ask them to describe what their house or their building looks like, especially if there's no house number. You can research the area using maps, whether they're the paper maps or online maps, where you can actually get a satellite view of what the terrain looks like. I would call If I think I might have ended up the wrong place, or if I'm visiting for the first time, I'll call and say, I think I'm at your house. I'm in a green Jeep. Is there a green Jeep in your driveway right now? Do we have any other strategies? How else do you keep from, how do you assure that you've arrived at the right house and you don't go knocking on a stranger's door?
So far, we haven't had anybody come up with a different strategy.
Oh, did I take all the good answers?
You may have taken all the good ones.
Okay, I'll do a better job and let you come up with the answers with the next one. Let's bring up that second poll question, another scenario that can happen.
We do have definitely checking the address and asking the family to describe their home.
Mm-hmm.
Also, okay, let's bring up this other poll question. And I've approached a home and heard fighting or arguing coming from inside the home. Yes or no?
And after you've voted, you're welcome to write down, what do you do? If this happens to you, what do you do to increase your safety?
And let's see, we're getting close to everyone having voted. Okay. And we have 54% who have said yes, okay, and 46% who have said no.
Okay. And how did people proceed? Are we getting some information in the chat window?
Let's see. I've had, let's see, alert agency. Mm-hmm. I still knocked and went in, but stood next to the door until I knew that it would be safe to stay. I would not go into the home and call to set up a new time to visit. I listened for a moment to see if I can hear the nature of the argument. We have to make sure children are not in danger. Mm-hmm. Let's see, it hasn't happened to me before, but it may help to wait outside or in the car. Call the home and let them know that you're there and ask if it's a good time to visit. I've called from outside the house. I've asked, is everything okay? And still knocked and asked if everything was okay when someone answered the door.
Great ideas, absolutely. The important thing in this situation, when these types of relationships are happening before you arrive, your role is not to mediate or to get into the middle of family arguments. You may, however, have an obligation to protect children from harm, and I did hear someone mention that if there are children in harm's way, that you may need to make a hotline call. Or even if you're not a mandated reporter, you can still call the public hotline as a concerned citizen. Maintaining a safe distance. I like that someone said that they listen for a few minutes and they evaluate and decide whether or not to approach the home. Do maintain that safe distance. Don't place yourself in danger if you feel like the situation is escalating. You can call for assistance, whatever that means for that situation based on your judgment. You might call the family member, as I heard one of our listeners mention, to find out if we're still going to meet today. Is that still a good time? I heard someone else mention that they would call their supervisor. You may have to call 911, just whatever seems most appropriate based on your circumstances. And that's going to bring us to the next of the 10 rules, and that is trusting your instincts. Someone earlier mentioned that they trust their instincts, and that is such a powerful, powerful force to pay attention to that inner voice that tells you something's wrong or there's something you need to be alert to. So don't ignore your instincts. Folks that have been hurt in the past very often have said, you know, I felt something was off, but I went in anyway. So don't ignore that very powerful force. Avoid making things worse. So I try to think, well, what are some of the things I could do in this situation that would make things worse, and put that on my do not do list, such as raising my voice or telling the other person to calm down, getting too close. Those are the types of things that we do that make the situation worse. Communicating a desire to help. That's as simple as it's stated. Just reminding the family that your goal is to help them to achieve their goals. Reminding them that you're there to listen. The seventh of the rules is diffuse using your communication skills. We have a number of excellent training resources that are available to us as human service workers, some that your own agency provides. Certainly we've had some awesome webinar presentations that the NISCA organization has put on when you go to your conferences. Some of these same types of skills are trained again and again using your verbal skills, such as the words that you actually use and your tone of voice so that it doesn't sound threatening or loud. Being a good listener is a very helpful communication skill. When a situation is starting to escalate, that other person is feeling like they're not being heard. So one of the most important things that you can do is give feedback to let that person know that you do hear what they're saying. Reflect back the emotions if you're seeing emotions. Reflect back the facts to make sure that you're getting the story straight. And of course, using your nonverbal communication skills, your facial expression, gestures, body position, even your use of space, all can do things to minimize the risk and increase your safety. One of the, as Diana mentioned, these webinars are recorded for later viewing, and there was a communication skills webinar earlier, just a few months ago, that was conducted by the association that I would encourage you to check out. That was very nicely done on some of these communication skills. The next, number 8, we're tick-tacking out of time here, so I want to move quickly through these. The safety plan. Very often I say, who has a safety plan? And hands kind of tentatively go up. And I'll hear that your agency has an evacuation plan, or perhaps you have a workplace violence policy, perhaps some policies for visiting the building. But very few hands in groups will go up and say, I have a home visitor safety policy. And a home visitor safety policy covers some of the things that we've talked about, the days and weeks leading up to a home visit, what you do before you leave the office, how do you communicate where you are, what do you do in certain types of situations, in what cases does your agency want you to call 911, are there certain circumstances where you should leave the house immediately or not approach the home. Those things need to be put in writing, and just relying on folklore and word of mouth being passed on from one home visitor to another is not enough. I also hear cell phone, that a cell phone is my safety plan. My agency gives me a cell phone. Well, that in itself is not a safety plan. Pretty much there's only two things you can do with a cell phone. You can either make a call in a dangerous situation, if that other person will let you do it, or you can throw it at them and flee the scene. So a cell phone by itself is not a safety plan. We want you to come up with a very comprehensive plan that addresses a number of situations, and I'll hit that a little bit later. Consumer safety plan is another item that's on here. Some of the work that we do involves very specific plans for each individual that we work with, particularly in residential settings. These things might include medical information, medications that the person is taking and their potential side effects, things that trigger consumer behaviors, and what are some of the effective strategies that will de-escalate that behavior. So if your agency has that kind of plan for each individual, that's vital, mandatory reading for you before you enter that client's home. And then, of course, there's your personal safety plan. Your personal safety plan includes all the things that you've learned over the years through your own experience and through your training. Things like looking both ways before you cross the street, don't swim alone, don't look like a victim, don't reach to the fence at the zoo, taking a defensive driving course, communication skills, self-defense. These are all things that help you to develop your own personal safety plans. Number 9 is to evaluate all incidents together. Despite your best efforts, things are going to happen. And when they do, we want you to take the time to evaluate and process what happened. We want you to look at the time that ticked up to that incident. What were some of the events that precipitated the incident? What are some of the things that you did well in that situation? Are there things that could have or should have been handled differently? And most importantly, what, if anything, did we learn from that situation, and what changes might we implement so that we don't have a similar outcome in the future? Last but certainly not least is to use your best judgment. When all else fails, use your own good judgment based on your agency's policies, some of the regulations that govern your agency, and your own past experience and training. You can, more often than not, in safety-related situations, you should be able to count on yourself to choose the thing that will increase your safety. So let's take a look at one example. We're just about out of time here, but I want to make sure we leave just a few minutes for answering some questions. We'll look at this one example, and then I'll open up the lines for any questions that you have. Here's our scenario. You've arrived for a home visit. The person that you're supposed to be meeting with is not at home. Even though you called ahead and said, I'm going to be there in 15 minutes, you knocked on the door, and the boyfriend is there, and the person you're supposed to meet with is not. The boyfriend looks like he's been drinking. You decide that you need to leave. The boyfriend says, oh no, you can wait, and starts to move toward you. In your chat window, let's put down some of the things that you might do. What would you do in this situation? And let me frame this a little bit. You might already be typing, but what are some of the things that we could have done before we even headed out for this visit? You could also think about what are some of the things you might have done as soon as you arrived at the home, before you even got out of your car. Were there things that might have tipped us off that the client was not home? And finally, now that you're in that potentially risky situation, which are the rules for staying safe that we've talked about do you think would be most helpful? And Diana, as soon as you start seeing some responses, let's go through what we're saying.
Okay, we have quite a few. You could have called first, called ahead. You could let him know to have his girlfriend give you a call. Observe him and his behavior. If there's no car in the yard, you may have observed that. Keep your distance. Look to see if the client's vehicle is still there. Smile and tell the boyfriend thank you, but offer to leave. For his offer, but let him know you need to leave. Tell him you have another visit to go to and would return later. Be positive. Keep your safe space. Look for two cars, and if only one is there, call before going to the door. Ask to reschedule. Phone her to set up something later. And I think I would have called again, make sure to ask what vehicle to look for, and maybe ask ahead of time to avoid the situation. And if they're already in the residence, leave or minimally pretend to use cell phone to call office. And tell him to reschedule, that you'll reschedule and that you'll call back.
Absolutely. Great ideas. So we've picked up some very helpful tips here. I'm hearing a lot of respect, not antagonizing the boyfriend, restating your purpose for visiting, apologizing for disturbing the household, promising to return at a better time or contact the family member to reschedule. I heard keeping safe space, maintain that safe space between you and that other person. Being mindful where your feet are going and not where they've been as you start to increase that space and work your way to your car. Excellent ideas there. Okay, go past these. I just want you to look at this list. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. I just want you to look at this list that I've written in here and just respond in the chat window. Which ones do you think are safety hazards to you? We've got the television and the stereo on in the background, other people in the home, children, pets, offers for food and drink, the cleanliness of the home, allergies, cell phones, whether they're yours or the family members. Which of these are safety hazards to you while you're home visiting?
We have pets, allergies, other people, the housekeeping situation, other adults. All of them are distractions.
Yeah.
Food and drinks, and all of them could be.
Yes. Yep, that's what we're going for. All of the items on this list are potential safety hazards to you because they are distractions. While they might not appear to be safety hazards, they distract your attention, and that can affect your safety. You may not be as aware to some of the other cues for unsafe conditions in the home when you're distracted by some of these things. So even with these things that we're calling distractions, we can put those 10 rules for staying safe into action. For example, with the television and the stereo, we can offer respect And we might use a well-crafted I statement to explain to the family that you're having a hard time hearing or focusing with that noise in the background. With other occupants, offering respect and safe space, assessing the situation, using your verbal skills to find out is it still okay to meet with the family member while there are unexpected people in the home, using your instincts and the safety plan. With children, again, offering respect because, again, this is part of the family. We need to respect that this is a part of their everyday life. Offering space and perhaps I statements if the child is either needing attention from the parent or is creating a distraction that you need to deal with. I would like to just flash this slide and then open up for questions. I'll take any questions that our viewers have. Some of the things that your safety policy should have, first you should have a policy, and if you've got one, a good one is going to cover preparing for the visits, in the days and weeks before, what you do when you leave the office. It should cover traveling to and from appointments, defensive driving, driving safely, what to do if your car breaks down, that kind of situation. When you arrive at the family's home, how to respectfully enter and safely enter the family's home. How the meeting should be conducted, including, how to handle a situation where the family wants to meet in a place that's not ideal. And finally, ending the visit when you're ready to leave. What are some of the things that you do so that someone in your agency knows that everyone has returned safely from the field? Okay, these were our learning objectives for this workshop, identifying a risky aspect of home visiting and being able to come up with at least one strategy for improving your safety in that situation. What are some of the questions that you have?
We have actually a couple of people have asked the same question. And what do you do if you're in an area where there's no cell service?
No cell service. So what is happening in this situation? You're in an area that has no cell service. What are you concerned about?
One of the questions came when we were talking early on about what happens if there's something going on in the household. I think it was relative to the first poll, where there may be conflict going on in the house, or just in terms of your own personal safety, or if your car breaks down, for example. How do you deal with no cell service, check in, check out of the home if there's no cell service? What's a good plan? I think people are asking for.
Okay, and anyone can respond to this if you have some ideas, but immediately I think assessing your situation. Are you in danger? At this point when you realize that you don't have access to telephone service, assess your safety, and if you're in danger, then it becomes an issue of space, removing yourself from that unsafe scene. When your car has broke down, defensive driving training says that you stay with your vehicle unless there's no hope of anyone coming down your road, and then you need to travel for assistance. What are some of the other things that our viewers are suggesting?
Someone had suggested if there's no cell service, get to an area where there is, make your call and alert someone that you're about to lose cell service and establish a check-in time.
Yeah. And that could include, I'm in worst case scenario, and I'm thinking I can't drive my car, but if I can drive my car, absolutely go to where cell service is available. Go to a public place versus a private residence to seek help or assistance. Any other suggestions?
I'm not seeing any other suggestions at this point relative to lack of cell service.
Okay. How about other questions?
Someone asked, what do you do if the family offers you food or drink? How do you handle that?
Okay. Offers food or drink. So we know when you go to mom or dad's house, when you go to a family member's house, one of the ways that they show love is to offer you food or beverage, right? And if you don't take it, it could be seen as an insult. So a couple things you could rely on. What is your agency's policy about food and beverage? And if they simply say, do not accept food or drinks in the home, you could respond to the family and tell them, thank you for your kindness, but I'm not allowed to accept food or drinks while I'm conducting visits. If it's coffee, you might just simply say, I've already had my fill of coffee for the day, being polite and respectful, but being appreciative of the family's gesture to be kind and to be thinking of you. Do we have other suggestions from our audience?
Always politely pass, even making up an excuse if necessary. Each situation should be judged on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Ask if you can take it with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or just set it next to you. Set it next to you, and you might not touch it again, but at least accept it. In some cultures, you need to accept that offering.
Right, and that reflects something that was just said, that in some cultures, not accepting can ruin the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a suggestion that works for one person is to bring their own drink in a bottle. They've not been offered a drink since they've started carrying their own bottle. And this person also politely mentions that they have a snack in the car.
Excellent. I love that idea.
And just going back to the previous question about cell phone service, somebody contributed that at their agencies they have workers call in at the end of the day when leaving a family's home. So they have a practice in place.
Good. That's excellent.
Now, Christine, we had one other question relative to personal safety. One of the folks who are on the webinar with us today does home visits with his family member who's ill and coughs up blood a lot, and this family member refuses medical testing and medical intervention. And the person on the webinar is wondering, is there a possible concern related to communicable disease? Is this person in danger from this family member who is coughing up blood?
So in that situation, that's a tricky one. My first advice would be to go back to your agency and pose that to your agency leadership, that particular scenario. There's definitely a concern if someone is coughing up blood. We know that infection control, exposure control is a big concern for home visitors and anyone who's a frontline worker. It would not be unacceptable to in that case, if you have to meet with that person, to increase your distance, make sure that you're a good distance away from that person when you're working. Coughing and spraying blood and seeing that, and just the safety trainer in me says you need to have some kind of barrier precautions, but that seems kind of disrespectful to the family as well. I would say you don't want to put yourself in danger. You don't want to put yourself at risk. If there's any chance that during that visit you're going to be exposing yourself to those bloodborne pathogens, that you need to have a serious discussion about how your agency wants to handle those kinds of visits. Do we have any other suggestions from our audience?
We have a few. Adult Protective Services. Call them and they will check into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else had mentioned keeping hand sanitizer in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Just from my experience in case management, I would also add, sometimes you can ask someone to cover their mouth when they're coughing and say it in such a way as, oh, I don't want to catch a cold or a flu. I've got to pay my heat bill this month and I can't afford to, be out of work or bring home a cold or a flu to the kids. So that gives that person an out. So you're not saying you have something very communicable, but in that interim, until you're addressing it with your agency or other ways, it provides a barrier so that saliva is not being aerosolized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was very respectfully done.
We do have some more questions.
Okay.
How's about dealing with cockroaches in a family's home? They're very visible in getting into materials I bring for the children.
Mm-hmm.
Is another concern someone is worried about. So how would you handle that particular situation?
Okay. We've had some lively discussions about some of the living creatures that you might encounter while home visiting. And one of the strategies that was suggested at a recent workshop was to use Ziploc baggies to keep things in sealable bags when you're transporting them, so that you're not taking any home with you, or that they're not getting onto the materials that you're transporting back and forth. Also keeping them, storing them in the trunk, particularly during the winter month. Some workers have found that to be helpful.
Someone had also mentioned make sure to shake off your clothing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the family member who's coughing up blood, they contributed that if the family's too sick to visit, excuse yourself and reschedule for a better time to get you out of that situation immediately. And someone asked also, I wonder how other people deal with smoking in the home when it's a health issue for my family.
Okay. A health issue for your family. It's a health issue, sure, for anyone who's in that environment. Yes,
right.
Absolutely. That usually involves using your communication skills to communicate what your needs are, because again, we want to be respectful of the family, and we're working in the family's home, but it's also acceptable for you to say that you're uncomfortable working around smoke, and could you please not smoke while we're having our meetings? Is there an opportunity to meet in a place that is maybe not as confined or with a window open? But not being afraid to express what your needs are if it's something that you are very uncomfortable with or might make it difficult for you, particularly if you have a severe reaction to any kind of environmental contagion.
A couple of other people have contributed some ideas in terms of, for example, the cockroaches and other bringing other possible hazards home, including keeping a change of clothes in the car, bringing materials in plastic containers, shake out your clothing, and bring a mat or tablecloth to sit on when bringing out the materials. And somebody actually asked, how easy is it to bring roaches from a home visit into your own personal home?
Ooh, that one I could not tell you. I cannot tell you. I haven't had that experience.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions come up at this point.
Okay.
Oh, somebody also offered sit on hard chairs instead of couches to help avoid bringing home any pests.
Oh yes, yes. That's good for your safety. If you have to make a quick exit too, it's a lot easier to make a quick exit out of hard furniture than soft upholstered furniture.
And someone has another question, harkening back to what we talked about earlier in terms of boundaries. How do you essentially redirect if the relationship begins to be viewed by the consumer as a friendship?
I would turn that back to your purpose for visiting. Many of our home visitors have a service plan or a family development plan, something where we're establishing the reason for our visits and tracking our progress. When boundaries start to blur and you start to have those boundary issues, you may find yourself doing more for the family, doing things for the family that they should be doing them for themselves, or that they ask you to do things for themselves, for them that they could actually be doing for themselves. And to be able to turn back to that plan and look to those objectives and say, these are the things that you have said that you're willing to do, and these are the things that I'm willing to do. Just kind of helps you to redefine that relationship and keep it on track.
Okay. We've had just a few more comments, some thank yous. Someone saying that that really sort of enables the family was a recent comment. Any other questions or comments before we wrap up today's webinar? I know we're a few minutes over, but we've had a lot of great input today, questions, suggestions. Okay. People are just writing in to say this is good information, a great experience. So Christine, I thank you very much. If you have any anything else you want to wrap up with, go right ahead.
I do not, other than I hope as you're exiting you can answer this question, that you can complete this statement. The first thing that I will do to move in the direction toward increasing your safety is, and then you make a plan to do that. So based on today's information, I hope you found something, learned something from any of our participants on the line or from the presentation that you're willing to try, and let's be safe out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. We really appreciate it. Again, I would just ask you to stay around for a minute or two after the webinar ends, and a survey will pop up on your screen. Very short questions, and give us any feedback you have. And again, if you're watching this in a group situation, if someone could please let NISCA know through that short survey about how many folks viewed this webinar today. If you are doing it in a group, that would be very helpful to us. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you to everyone who attended this webinar today. Thank you for your good work and for what you do with our families, and for being willing to go out and put yourself out there and make home visits. It's not easy, and it's a special group of people who can do home visiting. So I thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon. Have a great holiday season, and we will see you next month. We are working on another webinar, topic to be announced because we're working on it just today, getting a little feedback. So hopefully you'll be tuning in for that webinar sometime in early to mid-December. With that, I'm going to close the webinar, say thank you everyone, and have a good evening.